He is a winner of the Moth Grand Slam. He's been featured on Risk, and he's been featured on the Moth Radio Hour. Please give it up for Sam Dingman.
I moved to New York because I wanted to be an actor. Very unique, I know. And I'd been here for a couple years, and it was not going as well as I had hoped. And what I mean by that is that the full extent of my theatrical career was originating the role of nightclub patron number 3 in the off-Broadway debut of Sex and the City, the play. I would like to tell you the complete story of nightclub patron number 3. Nightclub patron number 3 enters a cool nightclub. Nightclub patron number 3 sees a beautiful lady. Nightclub patron number 3 approaches said lady, says, "Good evening." The beautiful lady smacks nightclub patron number 3 in the face and says, "Get out of here. We don't want you here." So that's the role that I was playing, but it was also a neat encapsulation of my experience in the city to that point. And this was hard for me because acting was the only thing I had ever done that made me feel like myself. And as I assume we all know, New York is a hard place to feel like you fit in. And I thought that by becoming a very successful actor, I would become a part of the fabric of this cultural megalopolis, and that my life would really take off. And I didn't really have like a backup plan in case that very rare scenario didn't work out. As a matter of fact, the only other thing I had ever wanted to do was to become a cab driver. And the reason I decided I wanted to be a cab driver is that my day job at the time is that I worked at a hotel, and the cab drivers would hang out outside the hotel, and they would always be like smoking cigarettes and telling stories about like, "Oh man, you know, I was waiting for this fare at JFK, and this guy came over, and he was like, 'Hey man, let's go to the strip club,' and we just went to the strip club, and it was cool." Or like, "Hey man, why don't you give me a fare to the airport, and we can go have a drink later." And then like the other bellhops would go out and have drinks with the cab drivers, and they would come back and tell these amazing stories. So I logically thought, that's probably what their lives are like all the time. So I did become a cab driver. And while none of that stuff happened, I did find that I was like weirdly good at being a cab driver because I love talking to people, I love driving around, and the best part of being a cab driver was that you feel like you fit into New York City because cabs are everywhere. And this was before Uber, this was before Lyft. And I remember very specifically this one night, I was driving along the Grand Central Parkway. It was the end of a really awesome day of dropping people off at the locations they had asked me to take them to, which is the only responsibility you have as a cab driver. And I was getting close to the city, and I saw the skyline, and the sun was going down, and it was that golden hour over the Hudson River, and I'm a really big fan of the band The Hold Steady. I don't know if anybody else here likes The Hold Steady. Okay, so you know the song Stuck Between Stations. It comes on, and I remember I turned up the volume, and it's like, bum, 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 bum. And I rolled down the windows, and I looked out at the city, and there was like purple and orange, like splashing off all the glass. And I shouted out the windows, "I belong here! I belong here!" I was so happy. And the idea that I could feel good doing something besides acting hit me really hard. So then a few months later, I was struck by something else. A Jeep Wrangler. I was pulling onto 79th Street, and it T-boned me. It was going like 40 miles an hour. It was being driven by a woman with no seatbelt on and a baby in her lap. Miraculously, nobody was hurt, except for the taxi, which became V-shaped. So after the accident, I'm a little dazed, and this cop comes up to me and he says, come here, I need you to fill out a report. I saw everything that happened, don't worry, it's gonna be fine. And I was like, okay. So I'm filling out this police report, and as I'm filling it out, the woman comes up to me and she's crying, her baby is screaming, and she's holding a cell phone, and she says, I'm sorry, can you please just talk to my husband, please, before you finish that. So I said, oh, okay, sure. So I take the phone, and I hear this voice say, hey, my friend, I understand we had a little bit of an incident. And I said, yeah, we did. And he says, well, listen, here's the deal. My wife, she doesn't have a driver's license. So my insurance company, they're not going to like this too much, if you know what I'm saying. I did know what he was saying, because it was exactly what he was saying. So he says, I want to make you a deal. I run this kind of independent body shop. It's up in the Bronx. Why don't you bring the cab up there? We'll fix everything up. I'll throw you $75. What do you say? This is the thing, guys. If I took my now V-shaped cab back to the parking garage, my boss, Sonny, I was convinced was going to freak out. I had just wrecked one of his cabs, and I was going to lose my job, the only thing that had ever made me feel like I belonged in New York City. Or I could take a quick jaunt up to the Bronx, get the car fixed, make $75 and continue on my way. Sonny would never be the wiser. So I said into the phone, okay, and I handed it back to the wife, who looked as shocked as I should have been that I had taken this deal. So I turned to the cop, I pick up the report, I fold it up and I put it in my pocket and I say, that won't be necessary, officer. He says, the fuck? And I go back to the cab. Fortunately, it wouldn't start because it had been T-boned by a Jeep Wrangler. So that meant that no matter how much I wanted to go to the Bronx and accept this deal, I couldn't do it. And I had no choice but to call the tow truck company that we had associated with our taxi garage and be towed back up to the garage. So I call the tow truck, and it comes, and it takes me up to the garage, and this parking garage where the cab company was housed, it had this really long ramp that kind of like wound up like 2 stories from the street. And it ended at Sonny's office, which had this ominous black door. And I remember standing there with the keys to this destroyed car and looking up at Sonny's office, which looked like a cave, and thinking, this is it, man. This is the end. It's just not going to work out. And I don't know what I'm going to do next. So I walk up there and I go in and I say, Sonny, listen, I'm really sorry, but I got T-boned, and I got the guy's information on this police report, and I don't know what to tell you, but I'm really sorry. If you want to fire me, I completely understand. And he goes, fire you? Are you kidding? You got the guy's license. You got all the information. This is a slam dunk. I'm going to call the insurance company right now. Good work. And then he reaches over, takes down a set of keys to a new cab and says, here you go, and sends me right back out into the street. So I was like, I have been rewarded for telling the truth. This is spectacular. So I'm back out in the street, I'm driving around, and my phone starts ringing. And I think, you know what? This is karma calling. Because I did the right thing. That person calling right now is the casting director at the Public Theater. And they would like to offer me a role at Shakespeare in the Park. It was not the Public Theater. It was the gentleman who owned the parking garage, and he was not too happy about my decision to turn him over to the insurance company. This is how I know he wasn't too happy, because this is what he said. You motherfucker! Do you have any idea who you have fucked with? I got your name, I got your medallion number, I got your address, and I got your phone number, asshole. So get ready to go down. And then he hangs up the phone. And just as he hangs up the phone, a Coach USA bus merges into my lane and shears the side view mirror off my cab. So just to summarize, on this particular day, I have now totaled one taxi, incurred the wrath of a small-time mobster from the Bronx, and lost the mirror on another taxi. And I just lost it. I started banging on the steering wheel and screaming. I said, "What the fuck is with this city? I don't belong here. I'm gonna die here. I cannot live another day in this awful place." I was so upset that I forgot I had a passenger in the back seat. And because this is New York City, this woman's response to her cab driver having a psychotic episode was to go like this. Ugh. So that night, I didn't know what to do. I was so scared, and I was too afraid to go home because I thought the guy was going to be waiting for me there. And my friend was having a birthday party, and I drank so much. And at a certain point, my friend came over, and she was like, "Sam, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, not good, not good." And I told her the whole story. And at the end, I said, "Isn't that crazy? I'm probably gonna die." And she goes, "Sam, that is crazy. You're probably gonna die. You don't have to do this job." She goes, "My company is hiring an administrative assistant. Do you think you could handle that?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe." She's like, "When you get home tonight, just send me your resume." Which I did. And 3 days later, I was an administrative assistant. I never got in a cab again. And for years, I sat at a desk. I looked out the window at the cabs racing through the streets. I booked flight itineraries. I filed expense reports. Everything was calm and neat and safe. And I have never again been in as much danger as I was that day in the cab. But I've also never been as happy as that night on the Grand Central Parkway. Thank you.
Comes the world